Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Ernie.
and this is Budget Nerds.
You are not alone.
No, you are not. And today we are talking about our aha moments, like those moments when something really clicked for us when we were using YNAB. So this is a fun topic. I think it'll be good.
It is, but I have to admit, all I have in my head right now is Take on Me. Such a good song.
I had that song stuck in my head like all day yesterday. There's something in the universe.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
we're not going to sing. I know you can sing. I
but then
can't.
YouTube would get mad at us, so we're not going to do that. But
Yeah.
Maybe we'll sing it later.
Yeah, we'll stick with budgeting.
It's
but aha moments.
Yeah. So, and we talk about this a lot when we're teaching workshops. Like sometimes every once in a while we'll be teaching and somebody will just have this aha moment, and they'll literally say aha, or they'll like freak out and say I get it. And it's like the most rewarding part of teaching is when somebody just like really gets it in a moment.
Absolute best.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about our moments that are like that through the years. So why don't you go first, Ernie, and talk about your first big aha moment, I guess.
Sure. So just the background here, I've always been a budget nerd. I've budgeted for long before YNAB with spreadsheets, tried a couple other programs. So I was into budgeting, but YNAB it didn't stick the first time I tried it. I ended up quitting it after a couple of weeks. Yeah, and I'm like, why isn't this making sense? Like, I'm a budget guy. I'm a numbers guy. This should make sense, but it didn't click. And I mean, now looking back, it's like, of course, YNAB is a different way of budgeting. And you do have to buy into that methodology. But once it clicks, like, oh my goodness, it's revolutionary. So for me, it all comes down to forecasting versus budgeting. With my old budgeting method, what I would do is I would basically guess what I'm going to spend in every single category. I would look at my expected income and then make sure my guesses for every category equaled or were less than that expected income amount. Yeah. And then I would just basically track my spending and just kind of hope and pray that by the end of the month, I spent less than what I earned. And that was never the case. Yeah. And so I think I brought a lot of that into YNAB. And I don't actually remember how I worked the numbers or if I was budgeting dollars that I don't actually have in my account. But I know once I grasped the concept like intellectually, then it clicked for me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm building a budget with real dollars here, like money that I actually have in my bank. Yeah, and it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I had the same aha moment too, because, and I've said this before, like when I first started using YNAB, like when I first looked at it, I thought it was kind of dumb. Like I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like this isn't how you budget. You're supposed to put your expected income at the top and like budget all of that all at once. And with this only budgeting money that you have stuff, I just thought I wrote it off, honestly, like for the first like month after I saw it. It wasn't until like actually my wife got into it and she researched it and she kind of like got the concept intellectually and actually taught it to me. And I think what it was is just realizing it's everything in the budget represents real money, because I think before when I was using Mint and doing like spending limits and all that stuff, like you could look at a category and say, okay, I have $500 to spend on groceries for the whole month. But then you had to do this whole secondary calculus where you're like, okay, but actually how much do I have to spend? Because I don't have, I'm not getting that second paycheck until later on this month. So I can't really spend all of the $500 until I get that. And it's just like, why not just took all that out and said, just forget about the future money and look at what you have right now. And so if I look at the groceries, I can say, okay, I know I can spend that. And it's like I'm working with real money instead of with money that could come. And it's so counterintuitive for so many folks because it's kind of almost like a brain hack, It's just this little tweak that just kind of changes everything. So,
yeah, I remember building out the budget, and then we always went to, okay, what do we have for dining out available? And this was pre-YNAB. And it seemed like every month we would spend just a huge chunk of our dining out money right away at the beginning of the month. And then inevitably, something or a number of things would come up out of the blue that we would have to pay for. And where are we pulling that money from? Well, I don't know. Well, we can't pull it from dining out because we've already spent most of that category. So we'd start pulling from other categories and then other categories. And I mean, seriously, by the end of every single month, we were always had spent more than what we earned. And with YNAB, I'm not budgeting for all the dining out at first. I look at everything else. I'm like, oh, we can only put $25 aside. And so that scarcity prevents us from blowing it all right away at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we just kind of, it allows us to steadily kind of pay for some of those things and curb that spending throughout the month.
And I think it's like, there's even another like brain hack in there too, where even if, when you get a month ahead, if you do put all of the amount that you need for the month all at once at the beginning of the month, you still feel like you're spending real dollars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing theoretical going on in that available amount in a category. It is real. And the way that we described it when we were starting, it's like I could take all this money out in cash right now, and like I could make all the budget. I could make all the budget categories zero and have it all in a pile. And so this like concept of like this is like cash in a pile, and it's like the envelope, the like paper envelope analogy really helped me too. Just like really realizing this is all real money and there's no theoretical monopoly money in there.
Yeah,
and
I
really
think for
feel
me,
like you're actually spending real dollars.
There's also a sense of pride there associated with that stack of cash that was real. Like once I got going with YNAB, I was spending less than I was earning, and so I had more money than I never had before. And then it was like, oh my goodness, this is all real. Like this is mine. Look at what the budget can do.
Yeah. So for me, that was like a couple months in. Like so, really, we both kind of had. I'm like kind of thinking through it, and it's hard to remember. Everything gets so wishy-washy. I wish I had journals from that time, but
I know,
but I don't. But yeah, I was kind of like you actually, because I looked at it for like one time, and I was still so frustrated with Mint because of all the problems I was having with it that I've talked about in other episodes. And I looked at it and I thought it was kind of a bad idea. But I think kudos to my wife for actually really digging into the educational materials and learning it, because I might have written it off and not tried it, later on. So that's
awesome.
What else, Ernie? What's another aha moment for you?
So another aha moment was credit cards in the new YNAB, because I started with YNAB 4. Then once it went web-based, the credit card, how those were handled, it changed. And I don't remember what resource or workshop or whatever it was that made it click for me, but I got the credit cards right away. And I'm like, this is brilliant. Basically, I remember thinking, so with every credit card purchase I have, that money I have in my checking account. Like I've already earmarked that cash for a future payment to the credit card company. And that made me feel so much more secure with where I was at with money, because the potential of then going into credit card debt was very, very minimal, because I already had those purchases budgeted for.
Yeah. I think that concept of using your credit card almost like it's a debit card, like every single transaction is backed up with cash. That's a huge difference. I was the same way. It's funny because I don't use credit cards, and I've talked about that in another episode. I don't use it myself. But I kind of laugh at myself because this is so nerdy. Like I didn't use credit cards, so I didn't need to take the credit card class, but I did anyway because of course
you're a budget nerd,
right? And now like you, I was using YNAB 4, and the new YNAB, the web-based one that's been out. I feel like we can't really call it the new YNAB anymore because it's been like 6 years now. But but anyway, that came out, and I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna switch, but I signed up for a trial, and I was like, I'm gonna run my YNAB 4 budget and my new YNAB budget side by side for a month and see how I like it, Well, that idea lasted about 3 days because I fell in love when I took a credit card class, because I was in there, Aaron was teaching the class, and I was just so impressed by it. Like, I was like, this is just so elegant, and it just matched up with the way I thought about how credit cards work so well. I was like, I'm in. Like, this software is obviously really well thought through. So that was like the moment for me. Even though I didn't need to practically apply it in my life, in my budget, I just liked the concept. So
yeah. And I was able to just think about so much less with the way YNAB handled credit cards, because YNAB automatically moves the budgeted spending dollars to the credit card payment category. So I was just focusing on my categories and what I need to budget, for all those upcoming expenses. And again, just working with real dollars in my checking account. I don't know. It was just, I just remember being so excited and so in love with YNAB.
Yeah, spoken like a true nerd. I mean, yeah, like there's so many things like with the forecasting and with the way credit cards work, where there's like just these complicated things going on, and it's so easy to get in your head and have a really hard time keeping all this information in your head. But where YNAB just like puts it all on paper and just says, hey, you can breathe, you don't have to be constantly juggling, different credit cards or anything, or constantly trying to do that calculus I talked about where you have some monopoly money in there and some real money in there. It's all clear, that's huge.
Which is huge. Yeah. Especially, if budgeting is overwhelming to some people, which it is, and I get that. It's just, it takes a lot of that overwhelming piece of budgeting kind of out of the equation.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say another aha moment for me also came after the YNAB 4 days, and with the web version, was adding goals to every category and creating a plan for the whole month that way. This is huge. This is something that we teach a lot. Sometimes we call it the budget template, but it's just making a plan using goals, and it's kind of funny because we didn't push this as a company. We didn't push this concept right away. Like, I think when we added goals as a feature to the new YNAB, it was just kind of a cool added feature. It helped you save better and keep track of things a little better. But now it's like everything, you know what I mean? And I had an aha moment about this even before we started really teaching the template idea. Because I remember I was watching a Whiteboard Wednesday with Jesse, and he was just talking about goals, and he just mentioned offhand, and I had goals to all my categories, to every single one, and I kind of get like a typical month's budget with that. And I was just like whoa. That like completely changed everything for me, because I had done what it seemed like goals were designed for, which was originally just to help with savings things, so I only had it on a few categories.
Yep.
And back in the YNAB 4 days, there was no mechanism to really remind you how much would typically go in a category. I would just usually look back at last month and budget what I did last month. But this kind of created a way to kind of notate how much you plan to budget every month in any category, and make sure I had a pretty variable income there that back then too, so I could have a good idea that I wasn't going to go over what I think I would get at least in a minimum, so just brought a lot of security, adding goals to every category that way. So that was huge for me.
Yeah, the budget template was an aha moment for me as well, because at the time, so I think we were about 4 paychecks every month. And so every time we got a paycheck, we just budget those dollars down to zero. And I always remember thinking like, well, how do I know how much to set aside for clothing or auto maintenance, or even some of my immediate obligations like groceries, transportation? Like, how much do I set aside? Is it too much? Am I taking too much from this paycheck, or am I not budgeting enough? And so when I get to the end of the month, am I going to be super short?
Right.
Or, am I going to have gone super, crazy low on all these amounts? and have all this money left over. But with the budget template, I was able to create a plan for all those categories to give me an idea, okay, this is how much I'm going to need. And then from there, I just, edited those goals until I got it to the exact dollar amount that I needed to match my income for the month.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. If you haven't added goals to all your categories, try it. It's really helpful. It's huge. So what else, Ernie? What was that? I mean, you talked about this in a previous episode about getting a month ahead last year. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? That was a big moment for you?
That was a huge moment. Yeah, and wow, thinking about it now, I'm having consistent aha moments with YNAB. Right? It never stops.
It's not like it just happens all at once. It's lots of things. Actually, yeah, even while we're talking, I'm thinking of another one. But yeah, keep going, Ernie.
Yeah, but with the month ahead, that was always something I was just slowly inching towards. Like every month I could see I had a little bit more money left over than the month before. And I just kept thinking, oh, eventually I'll get a month ahead, right? And be able to live off last month's income. But then I made it a priority last January because just when I did my fresh start, I'm looking at this pool of money and I'm like, oh, we could be a complete month ahead. And all our other priorities are, right where we want them to be at. So we did it. And ever since then, I'm like, oh my goodness, why didn't I make this a priority sooner? Because getting that month ahead, it's given us so much more flexibility with the budget, so much more security, stability. I mean, that's where the magic happens, is being a month ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, you understood the concept intellectually for a long time before you were even working toward that goal. But
I just figured, I'll just get there eventually.
Right? Yeah, and you will get there eventually. But definitely, if it's something that you can prioritize, go for it because it's huge. Once you get there, it's hard. I don't know if you can really describe what it's like until you experience it yourself. And I think that was what it was for you too, Ernie. Like, once you got there, you're like, oh, this is why it's so good. It's another one of those like brain hack things because it's just like you just don't have to. There's a whole other level of thinking that just goes away because you don't have to worry about timing bills to paychecks and all that stuff, and you have more security and everything else too. So
I mean, the scenario that I always play out in my head is, what if we were both lose our jobs all of a sudden, and then I'm looking at the budget thinking, well, I've already have this month's budget. Like I have the money for this month. And now without any new paychecks coming in, we have a lot more time to come up with a plan, to adjust, adapt, all that kind of stuff. And like I said, it gave me so much more security knowing we were a month ahead.
Yeah. And sometimes it's almost kind of arbitrary. Like folks ask me all the time, like, should I build up an emergency fund or should I get a month ahead?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, it's really the same thing. I mean, in the end, like the bottom line is you have some money in case there's an emergency. Like, hello, if something really bad happened and you needed the money that you had budgeted in next month now, you could grab it and take it into this month if you needed to, So I think there's a lot of people out there that might already have a good sized emergency fund because they've been budgeting for a while. They made that a priority. And you might even be able to go into your budget right now and budget a month ahead with that money and maybe try it and see how you feel. Because for some people, seeing like a big pile of money in one category gives them a lot of security, right? But for other people, having all their expenses budgeted out for the next month gives them more security. So
yeah, I mean, just make a brand new budget or do a fresh start.
Yeah.
And just look at the numbers of what it would look like to be a month ahead and then what your category balances would all be while you're a month ahead and see how that feels.
Yeah, see if you can do it. I mean, not everybody would be able to do that in one fell swoop, but some people can. And I think a lot of folks ask me about that thinking like, there is a choice. Like there is a difference between having one category with a lot of money in it and next month's funded, but functionally it's very similar because in the end you have some money lying around in case something bad happens, right?
Yep.
Or you could have both. You could have an emergency fund and be a month ahead too, which is even better. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways you could go there. I wanted to mention one other aha moment that I did mention to you earlier, and if you don't mind me chatting
No,
about
not
it
at
a little
all.
more. And for me, I think that is the concept of simplifying my account structure. Because when I came into YNAB, I was doing a lot of budgeting with accounts. I had like several savings accounts for different purposes. Like one was for like a home down payment, and one was for an emergency fund, and one was for like saving for a vacation or something like that. And I came into YNAB and I tried to do the whole thing where you'd match this category to the account, and it just was such a pain. Like because inevitably something would get off. Like I'd transfer some money and then I wouldn't go into YNAB and move the money in the category, and it just caused a lot of problems. And I understood the concept, and I even taught the concept of like, hey guys, just go down to one savings account and one checking account. Your budget doesn't care where the money is being stored. It just cares about the purpose of your money. Like I taught these concepts for a long time, but it took me a while to like fully let go of that, of like accounts having specific purposes.
Yeah.
But once I got there, I mean, I went all in. I mean, like I've written a blog post about this. Right now I don't even have a savings account at all. I actually
just one checking. I talk about you all the time in the workshops. People ask, how often should I reconcile? And I say, my buddy Ben, he reconciles every day because he has one account. One account.
It's that simple. I mean, like I do have multiple other accounts, like like stuff that has to have a very specific purpose. Like an investment account obviously has to be separate. Health savings account has to be separate because those are for tax purposes and stuff. But as far as my like regular true expense savings, most of my emergency fund, and my regular monthly bills and stuff, they're all mixed in one account. And like it doesn't matter at all, because once you get to this idea of where you're always checking the budget to guide your spending, your account balances don't matter so much. They matter for the purpose of reconciling and making sure that everything's all lined up and good to go. But as far as spending, you don't have to worry about it. So that has been extremely freeing for me, and it's really only been the past couple of years or so where I've really fully embraced that, where I don't have to have multiple savings accounts. I don't even necessarily have to have any savings accounts, and I just keep everything in checking. And I was able to go like to an online bank that had like a pretty good rate of return. It's not so great anymore because the interest rates are so low anyway. But that it's just been really, really beneficial to me because reconciling is so much easier. I don't have to worry about transferring between lots of different accounts. I can just focus on the purpose of my money, and that's huge. So,
do you remember why you set up all those separate savings accounts at your bank?
I think it was just there wasn't before YNAB there wasn't really a way to like have money stay perpetually in a category. Like I think back in the Mint days, like it would just kind of reset every month, and so it was just I didn't have like an envelope, like we have in YNAB, where if you put the money there, it's not going to move. It's just going to stay there until you decide to spend it or move it, And so I didn't have. It was on the bottom line. It was the only way I could think to separate out the money.
To protect those dollars.
To protect it, and not accidentally spend it, because even though I had a budget, I was forecasting, and because I was forecasting, the account balance, my checking account balance, really mattered a lot for spending. Because again, we're going full circle here, back to our first aha moment. If you are forecasting and you have monopoly money in your budget, right, you still have to do this calculus every time you spend money of, well, do I really have that much to spend, or do I need to wait till I get another paycheck? And so my account balance mattered a whole lot. And that's why I would separate the money into different accounts, because I still needed that account balance to guide my spending, even though I had a budget. But once you have YNAB, you don't really need that, because again, you're working with real actual dollars all the time, because you only budget money you have. And so that made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, because I remember doing the same thing. I set up a whole bunch of different savings accounts with the intention of transferring money regularly to those accounts, but I never did. And when I would, I know eventually I would always have to go back into those accounts to pull it out to pay for some sort of emergency, like vehicle registration or something like that, I knew was coming in 9 months, right?
Yeah. And like when you have that bill come up, it's like not only do you have, oh gosh, I got to pay this bill, but you also have this problem of like, I can't just go pay the bill. I got to be sure I transfer some money from savings first. And it just puts the focus on bookkeeping and transferring and like bank stuff, instead of putting the focus on, okay, what's the purpose of my money? What do I want my life to look like?
Yeah.
And make sure my money goes that way, So it's freeing.
Interesting, because just thinking back through all this right now with my savings account structure that I set up at my credit union, I wasn't able to save, not because of a lack of income. It was just my wife and I, we didn't have the boys. We were both working, so we had money, but we were playing with the Monopoly money all the time in the budget. Right. We were doing that forecasting. I think that's what really prevented us from saving.
Yeah, absolutely. And that and true expenses too, and all that. And I think it's just like, the truth is we only have so much attention. Like, our attention and our focus is like our resource that can be depleted. And it's only getting worse as I get older and I have like all these kids running around and my life's getting more complicated. The amount of time and attention and energy I have to put toward finances is limited. And so I want to use more time and more of that limited resource focusing on my goals and my priorities, and less on boring stuff like making sure that I transfer money in the right way and at the right time and all that nonsense. So simplifying your account structure as much as you can makes a huge difference. And it made a huge difference for me. So that's one thing I'm loving right now. So
very cool. Cool stories on our way to YNAB Nirvana.
Yes, exactly. Well, let us know what your aha moments are, or maybe you were in a workshop with Ernie and you had an aha moment. Tell us your story. We'd love to hear it. I'm sure there are many wonderful moments, and maybe you guys resonate with us, or maybe it's something new. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Just leave it in a comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, happy budgeting, everybody.
Happy budgeting.
Bye.